everybody. Happy Thursday to you all. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 4-game NBA slate, 5-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Today we are joined by Ben Rasa and Chris Spags. We're talking about the vaccines before the show. Ben got his. He's vaxxed up. Spags got his. I still need to get mine. How are we feeling now?
Apparently, Ben had the toughest week. The shot, too, I know is going to be the worst one for me, and that's coming for me in the first week of May, and I'll have a day off to fully convalesce. My one day off during the week will be spent having the shakes and the cold spells. I don't even know what happens, but Ben, seems like you've had a great week.
Yeah, it was nice. I planned it horribly, Spags. I should have done what you did. I should have took off the Tuesday golf show, but I didn't, and I did the show with the fever, and I'm going to blame my golf picks on the fever this week. But yeah, I mean, the one good thing we were talking before the show, it was quick. 12 hours later, I felt good as new. So now I'm refreshed. Since I'm a doctor, I gave the shot myself. So that was easier. Didn't even have to leave the house. You know how it goes. But yeah, easy stuff. And now I'm feeling good. Excited to get back on the tip-off show.
That's so convenient for you.
Yeah, easy game, right?
Really quick before we get into the important stuff, how are you guys feeling about this J-Lo A-Rod news?
Crestfallen? I don't know. Honestly, he was like cheating on her for a while. I think the reports were, and she could do better still. Like she can find herself some billionaire who still wants to blast the old hits from J-Lo and watch old P. Diddy videos of her and reminisce. So I feel like and she's also like, a queen in her own right of income and titan of industry and all that stuff. So I don't feel that bad when rich people break up, but when you're their age, like it's sort of it's a weird one because you got to sort of either put a ring on it or not, I guess.
Ben, any input from you?
I normally I would say I don't know what you're talking about, but I do.
Finally.
So I don't know. I didn't know they had been together for 4 years. I thought that just happened. I guess my sense of time is warped. But yeah, it was. I saw a picture of J-Lo with A-Rod with Mark Anthony from back in the day, and that summed up. I had more questions than answers. But yeah, it's a tough time in America now that the power couple is broken up.
We are all grieving today.
It's true.
All right. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. We want to talk to you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, guys. Yesterday we had some quality takes on the show that held up even with the inevitable onslaught of injury news. How did it work out for you guys? Spags, we'll start with you.
I had a pretty good day on DraftKings. Just feeling good about how that worked out. Had more Kyrie than the field by a wide margin. I basically had him in every lineup, which was definitely a risky play. And he honestly could have had an even bigger day. Probably could have outscored Westbrook if he got one more sit in the fourth quarter and didn't come back in, even though that game was close. They let the young guys get run, which I guess is going to happen for Brooklyn. But I'm feeling good. As a result, I'm going to be risking an uncomfortable amount of money today on a 4-game slate for the NBA on both DraftKings and FanDuel. But no complaints on a day here. We got things right. We even got the home run pick right with Acuna going for a double dong in that spot. So I'm very content with our offerings from yesterday's show, and I'm confident today we will find many ways to completely ruin the momentum that we built up yesterday.
Yeah, this is not. I didn't know what went on. It's going to be a tough scene here. I got a lot to follow. Apparently, you guys.
You weren't watching the show, Ben.
Well, I had the vaccine.
With your eyes taped open like a Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I was in the golf world mostly. I did find the time to bet the Rockets last night, which it went so bad that it actually ended up not that bad because they were down 25 so quickly that I had to live bet it a little, and I was able to cost average down. And they did make a little rally. They never were actually in the game, but they only lost by 8 points, and that was helpful to clear what was a horrible bet. I really thought they could win that game at home against the Pacers. They did not. They're confirmed bad, as everybody else knows. Now I'm up to speed with the Rockets. Not good last night.
Ben, since this is the first time I've seen you this week, really quickly, what was your thoughts surrounding the Masters?
So I was super happy for Decky. I root for him. I love him. Nothing really. I mean, it was just a very entertaining tournament. He won it. Xander had his chance and put it in the drink late, but it was more. I mean, on a personal note, it was terrible because Cantlay and Rory and Day got cut, which hurt me. But it was great. I didn't realize how crazy Japan is with golf. I had heard that, but it was kind of brought to the forefront. I mean, they are golf crazy over there. So this is like a huge deal. Could transform the sport long term.
All right. And with that, let's head into our NBA news. Giannis and Dante DiVincenzo are questionable today for Milwaukee at Atlanta. Giannis' status is one of the most crucial news items on the slate. So, Ben, do you think he plays? And how does it affect things if he is out?
So, yeah, I mean, he's been out for a little bit now, and I do kind of think we'll get clarification. I think he's going to play. The problem I have is if he comes back, I assume that there could be, some type of minutes limit. They're not going to just throw him back. They're obviously planning for the postseason. And it's one of those situations, if he's back, I don't think you're going to have enough to go to him directly, but it's certainly going to hurt, Bobby Portis and the other guys for this Bucks team who have been kind of carrying the load in his absence. Now, if he sits, I think it's certainly clearer what you can do. You can go to Middleton, you can go to Portis, you can go to these guys. They're going to have to keep them in a game like this. But if he plays, that's where it gets a little confusing right now. Looking, at the betting line, which is what I would do to try to get information. It's off the board where I see it. So that means it's kind of like a true game time decision. We don't really know. Huge piece on the slate. Obviously, one of the big dominoes we need to fall.
Yeah, this is a big one for really the DFS slate tonight. For my best ball lineups that desperately need Giannis to rest that knee one more day, give Bobby Portis one more crack at the starting lineup. But I think this is going to be an important one because really you can play Giannis now. Awesemo has been for 34 minutes, so maybe a little bit less than the ceiling would be potentially for Giannis. But I agree there's a little bit of risk with a knee issue, especially that maybe Giannis does end up playing closer to 30 minutes than 34. So maybe that's a bit of a downgrade. But if he's in, you really can't play any of Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton or Bobby Portis. These guys are priced up for life without Giannis, a thing we talk about many times on this show, but those plays basically become untenable or at best sort of dart throw tournament plays, guys you can't really trust the median projection of because of how much less productive they are when Giannis is on the floor versus when he's off. So if Giannis is off, I think that certainly is going to open up Middleton and Drew today, though their prices I think have been mostly put where you're not getting a ton of value out of it. Same thing for Bobby Portis on DraftKings, but it's definitely a key situation today, especially on a 4-game slate where you're going to have to get some Bucks exposure. I think you have to get Giannis if he's in, and you probably have to get some of Middleton and Holiday and Portis if he's out, just because that's the way the name goes.
All right. In that same game, Trae Young and Danilo Gallinari are questionable while Tony Snell joins the list of Hawks unavailable for the game. Spags, how does the situation look for Atlanta if Trae and Gallo are in, and who benefits if one or both are out?
So I think Trae is going to look pretty good to me if he does end up in this spot for him overall. Without John Collins out there, he's just been a higher usage player, around a 37% usage rate for him. And I've actually been hoping to play him on one of these slates, but he did miss the other day. We ended up with Brandon Goodwin chalk at a near minimum salary. And I think that's what would happen here again today if Trae Young ends up out. Goodwin's price has come up enough where he's not going to be, the lock it in play that he may have been a couple days ago, but still a play that's going to have a good amount of upside. I'd compare him to a Malachi Flynn, a guy who you're probably not comfortable initially paying the updated price point for this guy. But I do think with Goodwin, he's still in play very much at his price point on DraftKings as well as on FanDuel if we do get Trae Young out. But Trae being in, I think, is the interesting question to have here. Where if he does end up in, this is a spot against Milwaukee where they are going to defend him about as well as a team can, but also he has to score a pretty good amount to just make it work against Milwaukee. So if Trae is out, I think you're going to want to probably play Goodwin. You're probably going to play a little more Bogdanovic, and I guess a sort of revenge game for a team that signed and traded for him and then didn't get him because he wasn't even aware they had signed and traded for him. But in the spot, I think you kind of want to see Trae Young play and give him a shot here to make something happen against Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm with you here. 9,100, even coming off the injury, you're getting a pretty nice discount to, someone like Steph off him, and the minutes are going to have to be there for Trae Young. If he sits, you mentioned Goodwin. I mean, I don't know how, even though the prices come up, I don't know how you avoid it if he's going to play 36 plus minutes again. You mentioned Flynn. For the Raptors, it is kind of like that. It's just they don't even need to have high usage. They're just out there so often. Their peripherals will get them there. It's such a high floor. So I have a feeling, again, do I know? No, but I do think Trae Young is going to play in this game. And unlike Giannis, I think his minutes could kind of push up to where we normally see them. So looking at that, they are at home here. No Collins. Him and Capella will be busy. I don't mind Trae Young if we get clarification, of course. So that's one I'd rather go to of the big stars in this game.
Colin Sexton is questionable again after he missed the front end of the Cavs back-to-back yesterday. Ben, how do the Cavs grade out versus Golden State with Sexton's status up in the air?
Yeah, so this is another guy, obviously, we want to get clarification, but I think the difference here is someone like Darius Garland, he's playable, in my opinion, no matter what happens. He's been taking, more of a lead here. The minutes are secure, and the price is more than reasonable. So if Sexton is out, that'll solidify some of the usage. But even if he's in a good matchup against the Warriors at home here, looking at the spread, they're 6.5-point home dogs, 224 total. So the game, it could get a little out of him, but it's nothing extreme. It's not like that Suns game that we'll talk about. So in this situation, of course, I want to know what the deal is with Sexton, but Garland to me is in play. I guess Okoro would be a little more solidified and in play if Sexton does in fact sit. But for the Cavs, the personnel I think overall isn't going to be overly overhauled if Sexton does sit.
Yeah, Sexton sits. I think you have to give a boost to Garland, and he will look playable at his price point if you do get Sexton out. Was honestly looking like he was going to have an outlier day yesterday, then just kind of slowed down when they figured out that he was just going to shoot up a lot of shots, started defending him a bit better at the back half of that game. But I think Garland looks good. The usage rate for him gets higher by a little bit. The assist rate goes up enough, but the main thing for him is just that you don't have another guy jacking up as many shots. They had Isaac Okoro starting yesterday, and he did the best he could with the situation, but he's not going to be Colin Sexton in terms of the usage. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. One guy I think who could be good, whether Sexton is in or if Sexton's out, I think he gets a little better, is Kevin Love. The permanent numbers for him have looked good all year. He's started slow with the injuries and all of that. Also minutes restrictions, got hurt, then came back, then was on another minutes restriction that was more aggressive, but he's been starting to get minutes up. Awesemo has him in for 27 minutes today. I haven't met a 1.2 fantasy point per minute clip today, so I'm pretty intrigued by Kevin Love in either situation, but I do think if we do get Sexton out, it's going to be a better situation for Love too, because you're getting a Okoro in there, just shooting less shots, and I think it's one thing that to watch here where Cleveland is going to mostly look unplayable to me besides Love if Sexton is in. And then if Sexton's out, I think you can make the case for everybody. But Love's really the one that I'm watching, I think, regardless of either situation.
On the other side, Kelly Oubre is out again today, and it looks like there will be a lot of ownership going to Andrew Wiggins as a result. So Spags, do you trust him today, or would you rather go elsewhere on Golden State?
So I'm intrigued by Wiggins today just because I do think he's a linchpin on the slate. His minutes came down a little bit from Awesemo before the show, which I think makes him look a little bit less appealing from how I'm viewing him, and does make Steph look a bit more appealing. And I think that's sort of the thing we talk about a lot on these shows and really everything else on the channel. If you give a guy 2 or 3 more minutes, sometimes that could change the equation completely for him. Wiggins does benefit historically in games without Oubre, but the way that Steph is running right now, to the point where he basically just talked in an interview yesterday or talked in a press conference yesterday about how great he's playing, how much he wants to keep getting up shots, how much he wants to attack some of Klay Thompson's 3-point record, or maybe his point scoring record in a quarter, putting up 37 in a quarter. Steph saying he feels like that's in range for him too. It seems like he's just running good right now, kind of like Dr. Ben a couple weeks ago with the prop bets, just wants to throw it all on the table and see how it goes. And I think to me that does bode better for Steph than it does for Wiggins. But Wiggins probably in play, on the cusp of being in play, I would say. But if he ends up very chalky, I think move away from him, get more Steph seems like the move that I would want to take more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game. I think a lot of ownership is going to come. For 4 games, though, just looking, and it is a little early, but it's pretty flat. There's a lot of guys in that 20-25% range, but there's no one right now on the slate that's like 60% owned or anything crazy. And I don't see that happening unless we get some major injury news. So you look at these Warriors players, particularly the wings. I mean, yeah, Wiggins, obviously in the last game, you can't read much in. They won by 40 points, and he didn't play his normal allotment of minutes. You do have Bazemore at a more reasonable price tag, getting, minutes that I think will hold secure, kind of in that 25-ish range. That's where we have him exactly projected. So looking at that, I don't mind that as a pay down if you want to go that route. But there's a lot of Warriors targets here. And yeah, I mean, Steph has figured out if you can shoot 15 to 23s a game and shoot 60% from 3, that's going to be pretty hard to stop. It's really unbelievable what he's doing right now. If he continues to do that, I mean, everyone is going to have to take a back seat. So I'm kind of neutral to Wiggins at this ownership. I have no problem with it if it falls there, but you have a lot of targets against this Cavs team in a pretty good spot for Golden State.
Markieff Morris is questionable after he missed last game, opening up a starting spot for Talen Horton-Tucker. Ben, how does Morris's availability affect the Lakers versus Boston in the last game on the slate?
Yeah, so this is one, obviously the 2 guys at key right here are Morris and Tucker. If Morris comes back, certainly Horton-Tucker to me is going to take a massive hit, and I don't think you could really look to him just north of 5K. If Morris plays, though, I think the bigger question is, can you go to him? And he's been shooting very well in those games. but I just don't know exactly what I want to do here. It's a slate looking right now. Again, it's a small slate. There's not a ton of massive value. You know, we don't have a lot of guys at the min or in the threes where it leans more stars and scrubs. So you may be forced to look to the upper 4K range, things of that nature, to kind of round out the bottom of your lineups here. So this is a situation. It's not a game that I'd be looking to target, but when you only have 4, you don't have the luxury of being picky. Celtics are 6.5-point road favorites, 212.5 total. That's the lowest on the slate. So Morris, I think, is a piece of information, and it'll get clarity, particularly for Horton Tucker. But the Lakers are so banged up, and we've seen that time and time again. It's really a team that I'm not super interested to target.
See, I'm a little more interested in them today just because I think the matchup bodes pretty well against Boston, especially if you get Robert Williams out. I think it's going to make things a bit easier on Andre Drummond, who's basically facing a weaker version of himself, and Tristan Thompson. So I think, to me, that's one thing that I would be more interested in. I think we're going to talk more about Drummond coming up. But I think really for me, this right now, I think Drummond and Schroeder look like good plays. I think they become better plays if you get Markieff Morris out, just losing some more usage, losing some more rebounding. Horton Tucker, a good rebounder, but does assist more. So I think it's going to really open up the floor a bit more if he does start again. And Horton Tucker is fine. I think people love him a little bit more than they should, but the way that he meaningfully benefits is if Markieff Morris and Kuzma were both out. Kuzma's probable today, so that's not going to happen. So I think Horton Tucker is a fine play, but probably ends up a bit overowned just because people always love playing Horton Tucker, and I get it. He had some outlier days, but that was on Lakers teams that really were not fully stocked. This team definitely not fully stocked, but just has a lot of dudes in the mix. But I really think for me, it's going to be Drummond and Schroeder being the ones who get a bigger uptick, and Kuzma becomes closer to playable as well as Horton Tucker. But Morris, not the highest usage guy, so he just sort of gives a little bit of a bump to the guys that are already looking good. I think mostly is going to be how that looks for Boston, or going against Boston.
All right, that will do it for our NBA news. DFS fans get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. If you're only looking to play NBA DFS, then sign up now for Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95, or our $4.95 NBA Weekly Express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. We started a little vaccine.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean,
Issues
it
in the
honestly
chat.
could have been worse based on what I've seen on the internet, especially with our pal over under, who I think doesn't believe in a lot of things that conventional wisdom would believe in. But either way, yeah, it's so then everybody's got to do whether you want to or not, and hopefully you won't be one of the 6 and 6.5 million that have not great results.
Exactly. Yes. All right, let's head on to our one-on-one in these battles between stars. Which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? Giannis is currently questionable to play, but projects well if he's active today against Atlanta. Steph Curry has 5 straight games over 50 fantasy points and has said he's currently on the best shooting run of his career versus Cleveland. Wow. Spags, who wins in this one-on-one, assuming Giannis plays, the Greek Freak or Steph?
So right now, I would have Giannis projected just a little bit better. He is slightly pricier on DraftKings, so that is certainly a part of it too. You are paying a bit of a premium to get there, and I think this is something for me where the Awesemo minutes once again are going to be crucial. Where if he does knock Giannis down to 30 minutes in a later run of projections that are going to be coming up here as we get more news and all that stuff moves around, I think there's reason to move more towards Steph. It's just a spot for Steph where he's really killing everybody right now, and shooting is tough because guys could continue being hot for a longer period. I think we've seen that in the past. Damian Lillard's run when McCollum was out last year, I think, is one noteworthy one you could point to, where getting more usage plus just hitting shots at an unbelievable rate means you're gonna have a ceiling, a lot of nights in a row until you do run bad. And I think in this spot against Cleveland, like, there's really no indication that he should run bad against a team that gives up 38% shooting from deep, is going to give him a lot of clean looks, does play slow. So maybe that kind of clogs things up a bit more. But I think it's really a minutes question here, where I don't mind Giannis right now. I think the minutes question is going to be a big one. Ben brought that up early. I think that's a very viable thing to keep an eye on. And Steph, some concerns that people are just chasing some big days here that are unsustainable, shooting the lights out. It's going to be tough to do every day. But I think I'm intrigued by Steph a little bit more, and it's going to come down to the minutes and the ownership. But for me currently, I think it's going to be more Steph than Giannis. And if Giannis's minutes holds up, then maybe Giannis becomes more of a viable pivot to Steph than it may seem right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the minutes are the swing thing there, but I would go to Steph. I think there's just too many scenarios he doesn't get the minutes. If the game is even remotely, gets away, they will pull you on it. It's just one of those things. I think all the gray areas you tend to caution a guy coming off, sitting with a knee. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, Steph, of course, is going to regress. But Spags, as you just talked about, regression, I deal with that all the time in golf. It's not immediate. Like, he could keep this going for a while. And you do look at Cleveland, 27th in the league in opponent 3-point percentage. They don't really seem to have the personnel to stop him. When Steph gets going, it doesn't really matter who you have out there. No one can stop him. So I think with that, he's going to take 10, 12, 15, 23s. Who knows? It's going to be a lot. He's going to have the volume. I'm just going to go to him. I think there's just too many unknowns with Giannis. And then there also is the question, he may get the minutes. He may just not be effective. So you're kind of trying to thread a parlay. With Steph, to me, it's more binary. I would go with him of the two superstars tonight.
Okay. Draymond Green had a huge day yesterday in concert with Steph Curry, going off yet again. Tonight, he'll face Kevin Love, a player whose minutes may be squeezed by the return of Jarrett Allen and Larry Nance. Ben, accounting for price, who wins this one-on-one, Draymond or Love?
I'm going to go to Love. You're getting a $900 discount there, and that's something that is intriguing because I think, price-wise, it's a little tighter slate. There's not as much extreme value. And Spags kind of talked about, maybe Sexton sits tonight, and that would solidify some usage up for grabs, not just with Garland, but someone like Okoro, who's not a high-usage guy. Love could benefit from that, and he's someone, can stretch the floor a little bit. Golden State's defense, not worried about that. It should be an up-tempo game. It's nothing against Draymond. I mean, I think he's a fine play. We've talked about the Warriors, already on this slate with the wings, with Bazemore, with Wiggins. There's just a lot of other ways to capture some of that production. So don't mind either. But if I had the 900 savings, I think you could pay up elsewhere and really benefit the roster as a whole.
Yeah, I'm on the same page here. I think Love would be the way that I'd want to go. And I think he looks good right now. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I think he does look better if Sexton ends up out, but you can play him right now. And I think the thing is you're saving some money. Draymond certainly going to have outlier days. On some days that Steph has outlier days, but it's not like a consistent thing. Steph can easily have a monster day and just have less Draymond assists, less steals, less blocks. I know the block rate for him does take a pretty big jump in time without James Wiseman, and we have seen that start to take an uptick for him, but that's still a little bit too random for me to really pin down in a way that I trust Draymond this price going up, especially coming off of a really monster day that seems unlikely to repeat. So I think in this spot, to me, going away from Draymond, who's also going to be facing a Cleveland team that now has all these bigs healthy, guys like Jarrett Allen clogging the rim, clogging the paint. You still have Wade, you still have Isaiah Hartenstein in there playing meaningful minutes. You have Larry Nance. Like, that's now a lot of guys who can just sort of be in the way of Draymond doing his best things that he needs to do. Whereas Kevin Love just needs to hit a bunch of shots and score a little bit more than usual. And I think that's a lot easier ask than Draymond contributing in every category. So they could both have decent days, but I think for me right now, it'd be Love by a pretty decent margin.
Andre Drummond has yet to show, losing my voice again, a massive ceiling for the Lakers, but he remains at a reasonable price tonight against a questionable Robert Williams. DeAndre Ayton has similar upside issues on the Suns, but he'll face a depleted Sacramento squad. Spags, who wins this one-on-one, Drummond or Ayton?
So I do think Ayton's kind of intriguing. I have him scoring more fantasy points per minute than usual today at 1.2. He's been a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy this year. And I do think that's because of the matchup against Sacramento that it's going to get even better without having Rashawn Holmes out there for at least the next 3 games. Who knows how long he might be out, but the main thing, he's not going to be out there today. Damian Jones is going to get some minutes at center. Chimezie Metu is going to get some minutes at center. Whiteside probably going to get some minutes at center as well, though he's been in and out of the rotation. So that's a little bit more of a risk. But I think overall, none of these guys really give you any reason for concern with Ayton. I like Drummond more on a median projection basis, but I think as a tournament play, Ayton's going to be much less owned than Drummond. So Drummond to me is the obvious play, the one that we know in DFS, like a guy looks good. Sometimes you just can get lucky and get away with taking a slightly lesser projected guy who just is in a better situation or in as good of a situation. And I think I'm going to get some Drummond, but I do think going out of your way to make sure you get some Ayton is going to be a good move tonight because he's a pivot point and a guy who could have more upside if he just sees a few more minutes and is more productive, as I think he's going to be tonight.
So I do worry a little bit, and we're going to talk more about Ayton in a bit, but it is a big spread, and that does concern me. 12.5 points at home. The Suns could absolutely roll them, but I mean, if Sacramento can hang in the game a little, I just look at you mentioned, I think Holmes being out is a huge key. They have absolutely no one in that front court to stop him. They're one of the worst rebounding teams already. It's only going to get worse. They're dead last in points in the paint. They just they do nothing, and Ayton should have plenty of opportunities. The usage will be there. He's had double doubles in 5 of 6 games. if the minutes can come along with that, I think he's a fantastic play tonight. Nothing against Drummond. I have no problem with that, but Ayton is someone I think you should get exposure to, particularly in tournaments. The floor could be a little shaky because there's a lot of ways either he just doesn't play good or he's watching the fourth quarter from the bench when they're up 50 points. But if not, there's some definite ceiling there, and that's where I would lean in this one-on-one.
All right. Don't forget, one of the biggest edges in sports betting is always shopping to find the best line. Betting lines change by the minute and can vary greatly depending on which book you are using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo's Odd Shopper to find the best line available on the game or player prop you are betting on and give you that edge to beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures, all updated in real time. One thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show that has literally nothing to do with what we're talking about. I shot a video for Side Action, and it was this whole story about how J-Lo and A-Rod had like fixed everything and they were happy and back together. That was supposed to go out today. And then the news broke that they broke up by a source that I will not name because they are very wrong. So that could have been embarrassing, and I would not have been able to show my face on the show anymore.
I love that even you, like, you're not doing the DFS, like hard hitting content about news and all that, yet you're still affected by the trickle down of news and how it ruins anything we try to do content wise. So it's good. That means you're officially part of the family now, Kayla. You could be miserable like the rest of us chasing an imaginary dragon every day.
Fantastic. Yes. It happens to the Side Action peeps as well. All right, let's head over to our MLB section. Biggest bat. Let's head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Mookie Betts plus 325, Corey Seager plus 340, Joey Gallo plus 355, Austin Meadows plus 355, and Matt Olson plus 375. Spags, we'll start with you.
So I think my pick here is going to be Austin Meadows. And yesterday, Eric and I were in agreement on having Ronald Acuna, and that's sort of an obvious play. He was a top odds getter, and he's been really just a monster, probably the best player in the league right now, as we were talking about with Greg this morning on the strategy show, or the early live before lock for MLB. But he's been fantastic. Meadows, not quite the same case, but still a dude. He's got a 264 ISO against right-handed pitchers, and Lyles in particular, like his lefty splits are egregious. And there's enough of a sample size behind him to going back to 2019 to really point to it and go, oh yeah, Lyles is legitimately bad. This is not one of those things where you're looking at a small sample size and trying to grade a guy out on how it's going to be long-term. He gives up a 1.7 whip to lefty. He's given up a 230 ISO to lefty. He's a 4.5% on run rate. These are all really bad numbers relative to the main slate, relative to everything. So I think there are some other plays here. You can make Matt Olson for Oakland. It looks like a very solid play. I think really all those guys are going to have some power. But I think taking Meadows here, you get slightly better odds on a guy who's hitting leadoff too. That's something we targeted yesterday with Acuna. Again, Meadows not Acuna, but has a lot of the same things going his way. So I think taking Meadows today, high implied total for Tampa Bay too. It all kind of grades out for a guy like Meadows having a nice fantasy day, even if he doesn't hit the home run.
Now I have Eric in my head seeing Acuna.
Oh, you got me on your head, huh? I'm a Disney prince. Everybody loves it.
Speaking of vaccine, Eric joined me on the golf show last night, and he said he was feeling great. He got the vaccine. He was a little loopy. He was living the dream on that show. So he was drifting, he was drinking a smoothie, living life. You missed peak Eric last night. If you missed that show, I'll
have to go back and watch.
Yeah, you definitely should check that out. The Rays, just to throw support behind that, they are minus 200 favorite tonight. I'm going to go to the Dodgers, though, who are a massive favorite. I keep betting the Rockies, which is one of the many mistakes that I make when I dabble in baseball. I'm going to go to Mookie Betts, though. He is the favorite. Obviously, I wish I got slightly better odds on something like this, but at the same time, he's facing somebody named Gomber, who I'll let Spags talk about, who is left-handed. Mookie Betts seems to be doing good, returned from the series, had a little brief injury stint there. He's been playing pretty well. What can I say? The Dodgers should bomb. I'm looking at the team totals. Obviously, they are at the top here. I wish the game was, of course, in Coors. It is not, but still, I think they'll have massive opportunities. Not just him. That's the one thing. The Dodgers are going to score runs. Will it be Betts? I mean, that's a hard, obviously, thing to peg down, but he'll have opportunities. So that's where I'd go, taking the chalk on the board, Spags.
Yeah, with the Gomber thing, it's weird because this is one of my pet theories, and I don't know that it's going to hold out over the longer term sample size because the Dodgers have so many talented hitters on their team, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about them on the Live Before Lock show coming up after we leave the airwaves on this stream. But I think with Gomber, Gomber really doesn't show any signs where I'm like, oh, he's legitimately bad. It's not the biggest sample size, only a 160 batter sample size for him going back to last season, but he's been passable. And I think the thing with the Dodgers that they get they to me might be a more public team than people realize. I think both for DFS and for betting, because I mean, they won the World Series. Obviously that's going to help out that a bit more, but I think they just are getting a lot of the benefit of doubt in every matchup where it's like, yeah, these guys are going to find a way to get there. And like Mookie's obviously, a fantastic player right up there with anybody you could point to in the league, but only a 163 ISO over the last couple seasons, actually a 143 ISO, excuse me, over the last couple seasons going against lefties. He's not been a lefty masher. And I think that's something that you're getting sort of the benefit with the odds here because he's a Dodger and he's sitting in the leadoff spot and all that. So I think just the Dodgers are a little bit overvalued. I'm not going to gripe going against Gomber because he's a small sample size guy with no pedigree who's probably due for much worse days than he's had so far. But I just think one of my overall takeaways from the early part of the MLB season is that the Dodgers are great. Yeah. But every single day they're overvalued. They're over leveraged in terms of ownership. I think at a certain point it's going to catch up. And if it hasn't already caught up on some of the slates that people have seen so far.
All right. That brings us to biggest arm. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? Which is the worst? We've got Julio Urias, Rich Hill, Sean Manaea, Merrill Kelly, and Jordan Lyles. Ben, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go to Sean Manaea. He was on the show last time I was on, and he had drawn the Astros 2 times in a row, and his strikeout prop was very low. He actually went over it. Now he's got bumped up a little bit, but I think he can go over this as well. You look at the situation again against Detroit, not a team that I'm overly concerned about. You've got Oakland at home here. They've started bad, but I do think they're minus 175 tonight to win the game. So maybe he's stretched out a little bit. And then just looking again, these are small sample size, but Detroit so far this year has been striking out, in the bottom third of the league. So there could be opportunities there. Simple as that. Price seems reasonable. So with my, as a doctor, certainly not a doctor of baseball, but that's where I'm going to go. Sean Manaea, who's becoming my favorite pitcher because it seems like he pitches every Thursday. I guess that's his strategy.
Yeah, I'm no doctor at baseball either, but I do like to call myself Mr. Baseball because of how accurate. No, I've never once. That's the first time I've ever said it, but I'm going to start going with it from now on because I need a title here on this show besides just the guy who wears stupid money hats. And I think for me, the top over bet is going to be Rich Hill going against Texas. Texas, a team that we're going to pick on a lot really all year long. It seems barring some drastic roster overhauls. A lot of dudes who just strike out at a good clip, a 29% aggregate K rate in their lineup that's projected today. 5 guys who strike out over league average. I think it's a pretty good spot for Rich Hill, a pitcher who I expect to regress more positively. He's getting older, so that's maybe some cause for concern. And many veteran DFS players can point to Rich Hill's many issues with his blisters and all of that. But I do think, a 21% K rate over the last season and change. The longer term sample for him is a 26% K rate. And I think these spots against Texas are where you could sort of climb back to at least league average, a 22.9% K rate. So to me, Rich Hill, I think, is the best overplay. But the play I like the most is going to be an under. And I think this is one of the failings that we have when we were planning out the segment for a biggest arm. I like the under on Julio Urias by quite a bit. His strikeout stuff has been so mediocre since he's taken over as a starter, and and some of his relief efforts as well last year too, but only a 20% K rate. He's just been less effective each time out, and he's going to be good today because Colorado's not a good team. That doesn't mean he's going to have a lot of strikeouts. I think people are kind of conflating the two, where you could pitch 6 innings if a guy like Urias even does pitch 6 innings and get no damage to you, so you could have a nice day for fantasy. But that doesn't mean you're going to have 10 strikeouts. And I just feel like Urias getting sort of the benefit of the doubt here when he hasn't shown that elite strikeout ability that's for pretty much there for every other pitchers in the Dodgers rotation.
Thank you, Mr. Baseball Spags. Whose favorite team is the Cardinals?
Never that. No Mr. Baseball would ever root for the Cardinals. I think we can all agree that they are a stain upon baseball's existence.
So if you were the commissioner,
tell that to Yadier Molina.
You would retract them. They'd be relegated, Spags.
I would put them. Yes, I would actually make one major league team go down to AAA every year, and that team would be the Cardinals every year.
Yeah, okay.
You would bring them back up for one game,
it would definitely
and then
be
send
the
them
Cubs.
back down. Just relegate them, just to put them in their place. And then once they stop being assholes on social media to everybody who's either on the team or just talks about the Cardinals, then we can let them back in and then quickly relegate them again, just out of spite.
Haters gonna hate.
Relegation would be the single best thing that any sports league could do. That is a fact.
Did you guys watch Ted Lasso by any chance?
It's on my list. Everyone raves about it.
Yeah, everyone loves it.
so much better than you would ever think it is, but they do deal with relegation and vis-a-vis the Premier Leagues and all that as one of the topics. No spoilers, but it's obviously going to be something that comes up when you are doing a best to worst kind of, or worst to best kind of story for soccer. But yeah, like an important plot point, and honestly made me think like, yeah, we should have relegation in the US. Like there's no reason why it shouldn't be there. Like it would be a lot more fun. I think the NBA is probably the one that has the best chance of doing that now because they are experimenting a bit more. But I don't know. I would love to see it because like, boy, you add some drama to those teams that are tanking them in a major way with that. Soccer's
got to figure it out. It's super drama, like, and it's bad teams. There's nothing better than when you watch bad teams fighting for their lives. Relegation, that is the key. They should do it.
The doctor would know. Producer Tyler there got a little excited.
Jumped the gun.
Up the graphic.
My face is just on the screen. I didn't even know what was going on. I was very confused.
It's the segment we all can't wait for every single time. All right. It is time for the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day, with Dr. Ben now at 11-3 after Seth Curry, personally attacked Dr. Ben by scoring 0 points on a day where the good doctor picked the over on his 10.5 points. Ben, any thoughts on Seth Curry's blatant disrespect?
Yeah, well, it was, I wasn't really watching the game, and he was like 0 for 3 in the first quarter, and I thought, and then he had no points at halftime, and I was a little concerned. Then he just had no points. So I guess if I'm going to spin it, when you bet props, when you bet anything, there's no points for second place. So if you're going to lose, it's probably easier to lose like that than lose with the hook, as I did with a prop the other day. So clean slate. We're back post-vaccine, feeling good. Really like a prop today, and I'm excited to get after it here.
And get after it we will. Here we go. Another...
You gotta loosen
stretch
up.
Out.
Gotta get limber to read.
Gotta get loose here. Okay.
Mouth garbage that I put in for Kayla.
Another limerick by Spags. Here we go. The past is the past, and today is a new day and a new week of Dr. Ben. So Dr. Ben, with the people having grown addicted to your prop bet success and now jonesing for a fix of your delicate genius, please give us all the smoke like a young Bob Marley as you bring the public your personal redemption song. What is today's Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day? We never know what we're getting with that.
You really don't. I think Spags is intentionally delaying these run sheets, so it's just like on the fly, no chance to prep, just let it fly, and we'll see. But I'm going to a game that we've talked about and a player that we've talked about in the Suns-Kings game. I'm going to DeAndre Ayton. His points, rebounds, and assists. It was at 26.5 earlier today. It's now at 27.5. I got it at 26.5. I'm going to take that because we're going to try to turn this streak. Minus 115. I'm going over there. I will say over 27.5 minus 105, which is listed right now on OddsShopper. I would go over that as well. And it's for the reasons that we talked about. No Holmes, and the interior defense of the Kings is absolutely non-existent. They're giving up 53.8 points in the paint per game. That is dead last in the league. They are dead last in the league in defensive rebounds per game. So Ayton could absolutely feast on the boards, particularly if there's a good pace in this game. A lot of putback options. He's had double-doubles in 5 of 6. The only thing that I'm really concerned about is the minutes. And obviously that is a big concern. He's going to have to play the fourth quarter. He's going to have to get minutes to push over this. But at the same time, if he puts up another double-double, any assists that I get is just a bonus. Honestly, this is just basically points and rebounds for a guy like Ayton. And I think he's just extremely live to do what he's been doing. A 20-10 type game is very live here. He should just crush them on the interior. I think it's as simple as that, Spags. I'd love to dig deeper, but I don't honestly think I need to. It's as simple. They don't have the personnel to slow him down. He's been playing well. I think he has a possible explosion game tonight. So are you with me, or are you going to try to push me to 11-4 here?
So I think this is a spot where the median projection is going to be right on the nose, where I have him basically at 26.5, but I'm banking today on him getting a few more minutes because that projection comes with Ayton getting 26 minutes. I do think if we see him get to 30, or if he just has a few more productive minutes in the original 26-minute projection from Awesemo, those are both ways that he can get there in this spot that, as we talked about earlier, and as Ben just said, it's a really good spot for him going against guys like Jones and Whiteside and Metu and whatever else they trot out there at center with no Rashawn Holmes, a guy who's been legitimately good and maybe maybe people slept on how good he's been and how important he's been to the Kings just staying afloat. So I think this is a good over to take today. I'm intrigued by it. And I also want to point out one other thing with the ways that we do the write-ups for each show, other than the ones where I don't have any time. I'm slowly trickling out plot into this. I don't know if you guys have caught it, where there was an adoring public who was demanding Ben's picks, who was storming the gates to get the picks. Now they're like junkies who are going through withdrawal symptoms from not getting a good pick in a while. Where is it going to go tomorrow, guys? I don't know, but that's why I'd watch the tip-off every day just to see what Kayla has to say in my bizarre narrative that I'm too precious about in the DFS show.
You were like Taylor Swift over there throwing in Easter eggs in these scripts.
My girlfriend would love to hear that I'm like Taylor Swift as a fellow obsessive Swiftie, but I'm thinking more like a Rick and Morty, where it's like a thinly layered or actually a thickly layered plot here of, or maybe what's the show? Solar Opposites. Probably nobody watched that on Hulu, but they have the subplot where there's like, it's a show about aliens. It's a cartoon by the Rick and Morty creators. And then they like shrink people down and put them in the wall. And then there's like a whole subplot about the lost like island that's going on within the wall. And I feel like that's what this is here. Something that's very esoteric and only makes me happy. Which is kind of content I like to do.
I don't know what is happening. What?
Everybody else, like the entire Tyler, our producer's doing this gesture over his head. Look, I don't care if there's one person out there who's going to watch the show and be like, Solar Opposites a great show. I completely get what Spags is doing. And that person will be my kindred spirit.
So maybe I'm not going to get the vaccine.
Yeah, well,
I can trust you. I was like this long before any sort of vaccine. That's what years of marijuana abuse.
Oh, we know. Oh my God.
I was thinking more of like The Wire when you said, you got everyone hooked. I was thinking that, but you went solar opposite. I don't know. Okay.
It's a great show. We watch a lot of shows. We've been good quarantine people, and I'm a man who enjoys an adult-oriented cartoon. That sounds like a manga type thing. To be clear, not porn cartoons. I mean funny, silly cartoons for adults.
Can I real quick throw out because there's no better time to do this since we're talking about this. Have you seen the show Snowfall?
People are talking a lot. I know our boy News God was pitching that earlier today, and people love it.
Seen it.
Is that why The Wire's trending on Twitter today?
That's how I
People
discovered this Snowfall. Apparently, it's very, very good, but I don't know. I've never seen it.
What outlet is it on?
FX, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, people are, I think, pitching it as like The Wire, but I've seen a lot of people rebutting that, being it's more like Breaking Bad, because I guess the lead character is a guy who gets addicted to the drug game, and I'm intrigued by it. I'll put it on the list, I guess, but definitely been hearing about it more this week, all of a sudden, where I guess I don't know if it's back or what, but hardly saw the show besides ads everywhere, and now I feel like people I respect, including News God, talking about it as a must-watch show, including the chat. Chat loves it.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually watch this. I say that to a lot of things, and then I know I'll never watch it. Like Solar Opposite, when I nodded there, like that's never gonna happen. I'm gonna watch Snowfall, and I'll report back.
How dare you treat my suggestion like a common Eric Lindquist suggestion?
I'm gonna go Ted Lasso. I got Ted Lasso on the list. That's one of two. Is not bad.
I'll take it.
Here we go. Here's a fun fact: my area code is apparently code word for meth in other states.
What? Oh, is it because your area code's like a methy region?
I guess it wasn't invented there, but it like was huge there. Winter's Bone, the movie with Jennifer Lawrence, was filmed like 20 minutes from where my parents live.
Honestly, didn't know that was about meth until right now. I didn't
either. I've never seen it, but that's the word on the street.
Do we call meth Winter's Bone? Is that more?
Yeah,
417.
Okay, sure. I know I use that code whenever I'm buying meth by the dozen. Did you buy meth by the dozen? Can I get a baker's dozen of meth, please?
I don't even know how to get us back on track at this point. But how about we try? Let's head over to No House Advantage. For No House Advantage's prop or not, here are some of the props of the day for key players. Do you guys like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? We've got Steph Curry over under 32.5 points. Dr. Rasa.
So this one, I think is tough. That's a lot of points. I do think if I had to take a position, I really like Steph. The way he's playing is out of control. But even on 4 games, I think you can still be a little selective at where you go. And this is one I would lean over if I wanted to put it on the card, but I certainly wouldn't be putting this towards the top. I think that's a pretty fair line. So I'll lean over. But again, when you're prioritizing, this is not one where there's an injury or something that's going to launch Steph into a stratosphere. Looking at Odd Chopper really quickly, 32.5 is minus 125 to the over. So it's a slight favorite, but it's by no means a home run.
Yeah, according to Awesemo, there's a 55% chance of hitting the points over. And honestly, I'll pretend that I put this in for a deliberate reason rather than just pulling some odds that I thought seemed fun. And I think here's the point about going to no house advantage and playing there, where the layman out there might go, yes, Steph Curry's been shooting really well. Let me take the over on his points. That's got to be a great probability there, but it's only 55% chance. What you could do instead is go to Steph Curry's 3-pointers made prop. 4.5 is the line there. Awesemo has been for 5.4 3-pointers made. As Ben talked about earlier, he's been gunning them more than anybody would possibly expect. Steph normally doing that as usage takes a pretty big jump in court time without Kelly Oubre. Oubre's out again. So this spot for Steph taking the 3-pointers prop, a 74% chance of hitting the over there. I think that's the move. I still don't mind the points prop, but I do think relative to the 3-pointers prop, it could end up being kind of a fish play. So take the easier one, take the higher probability one according to Awesemo, and that's the over on the 4.5 3-pointers.
Okay, Spags, right back to you for Dennis Schroeder. Over under 22.5 points plus assists.
So this is one that I like a little bit more. And again, I pulled these numbers today without checking Awesemo's odds. And it's always great when it does line up to see that he's got a 64% chance of hitting today on no house advantage. And I think this one probably a lower priority than Steph Curry with the 3-pointers made, where I think you make a case that's an 8 or 9-pointer. For Schroeder, I feel like this is probably a 6 or 7-pointer for him, picking him to get over on the points and assists. But I think it looks good right now. I think it's going to look better if you do get Markieff Morris out. So that's one way the bet could even improve as the day goes on if we do get that news going that way. But it's not going to be worse if Morris is in, because that's where we have the line right now, assuming that Morris is going to be in. So Schroeder's been quietly remarkably productive in this time without LeBron and without AD. The rate data backs it up too. He's lost a little bit of usage to having Drummond out there, but still been pretty good night in and night out. So I think the over here would be another one that I like quite a bit, just at a little bit of a lower priority than the Steph one and a few other ones out there.
Totally agree. You mentioned the usage is there. Everything really checks out. And this is a situation, there's only a couple Lakers that I think we can go to. And you've mentioned it's almost like a free roll. If we get news, it's only going to benefit him. There's really nothing that could happen outside of something happening to him where you're not going to like this prop even more. And as we talk about every time, lines are static. So you're going to create more and more value if news breaks. Even if it's everything that we think, I still think I would go over this. So you're in a pretty good situation there. That's one definitely worth considering.
And finally, we have De'Aaron Fox over under 37.5 points plus assists. Ben.
So that's, again, this is a game where, first of all, can they stay in the game? That's a reasonable question. We talked about that with Ayton. This is the other side. That's a pretty big number. So I really like De'Aaron Fox in life, but I'm going to go under here. And Awesemo's projections kind of confirm that. It looks like it's sitting just north of 70% to go under this 37.5 here. So that's definitely worth considering. And again, it's just a product of the game. Kings are a double-digit dog on the road here, and that's just a pretty lofty number. So you look at that, the books kind of bear it out. I think under is the move here.
Yeah, I think the double-digit dog on a back-to-back against Phoenix, who we've talked about a lot on here, just one of those teams, kind of like Utah, take a little bit of a lofty line. And there are a lot of ways here that things could go bad for Sacramento just because of all what we've talked about, where Phoenix, I think, is probably going to be potentially one of our good dog picks today. I think that this team, just a good team, projected for a high total for Phoenix and a big spread here, I think makes it look like there's a decent possibility here Sacramento just gets beat down today. And unfortunately, love De'Aaron Fox, but I think it could be a day that he suffers because of his team just not having enough guys to keep up at this point.
And as always, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. That'll take us right into good dog, bad dog. In real life, there's no such thing as a bad dog, and betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who's a good dog to target tonight and who is a bad one? Ben, we'll start with your good dog.
So there's only, we only got 4 games and one of them is the Kings, and that's not the answer in my opinion. I'm going to go to the game that's off the board, just looking at what I think we're going to get. The Hawks at home plus 4.5. They think there's just a lot of ways that Giannis might be limited. This is one, too. If you want to take a risk, sometimes you can anticipate. Say you think he sits, you could try to lock this in if it's available and hope that you steal a ton of value. This line could explode one way or the other. You could also catch a very bad line, so you want to be aware of that. But if Trae Young plays and we get a full allotment of minutes, I think the Hawks can, I'm not even going to call it steal one at home. I think they can definitely win the game, though.
Yeah, I think the Hawks might be my good dog too. I do think that they have a good shot at getting some points up today, though. That's going to change if Trae Young gets ruled out. I think that you could probably null and void this pick for good dog, right? If that does end up being the case. But at this current time, I think that they can get there. I think Trae can have a nice day. Sort of filling in for really all the other missing Hawks. I think Bogdanovich has shown enough. He's probably not going to be as productive as he is when Trae Young is out, but still has shown a pretty big ceiling even in games where Trae has been out there just because of John Collins not being available. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter. They have so many guys who've been out for Atlanta that are now that trickle down is going to go to Bogdan. And honestly, having no Tony Snell, I think it somehow leads to a few more minutes for him. So I agree. Atlanta seems like a good dog to me in a spot that, if they don't have Giannis on Milwaukee's side, especially, I think Atlanta could win this game outright. But I think right now as a home team, I don't mind them to cover.
All right, Spags. Now tell us about your bad dog.
I think the bad dog has to be Sacramento here. I just don't like the back-to-back going against Phoenix, a team who does not screw around for the most part with teams. They'll obviously, any NBA team is going to have some down days where they play down to competition. But Phoenix really more, as I mentioned, like them and Utah are just two teams, I think more often than not, they're not going to play down to competition. They are going to sort of get there. Even if they start slow and let a team stay in the game, by the time the fourth quarter comes, they're going to find a way to put this team away and make it usually look pretty ugly for the other side. So Phoenix, to me, getting away in a big way would mean that Sacramento's got to be one of the worst dogs on the slate, I guess, even with a very generous total, or generous spread here favoring them or favoring Phoenix. And I don't know. I'm kind of scared actually, because like it's such a big total. It's a 12-point total they could cover, but you got to pick one out of 4 game slate. So I guess they're my bad dog.
Yeah, I mean, the Kings have lost 8 straight. They're bad on the road. Phoenix is good at home. I'd be stunned if the Kings won the game, obviously. Could they cover 12.5? Yeah, but I think it's one of those games. This game is going to be bouncing around, 10 to 15 for a while. And that's just, I don't see a ton of value in trying to back a team and hoping that they hit a couple baskets late to slip inside the numbers. So if for some reason you wanted to bet the Kings, I would wait. I have a good feeling you could get 15, 16, many more points live when they eventually and probably inevitably start slow.
All right, which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate? Ben, we'll start with you.
So, as I always come from the betting side, DeAndre Ayton in that exact game. I think he's going to dominate inside, and I'll take it to the DFS side. I think there is a real tournament upside with him, particularly if he gets those minutes. He should absolutely whoop the front court of the Kings. He's got everything that you want. So he's someone I bet the prop already, and I would love to see it go over tonight.
I think my make or break, particularly on Fanduel, is going to be Steph Curry. I find it probably more difficult to get away from him there than on Draftkings. And on Draftkings, I think, I'm still going to get a lot, I would imagine. Obviously, haven't run my crunch yet and sorted everything out because that's a fool's errand at this point of the day. But I do think Steph maybe moving away from him there, getting more to a Trae Young would be a move I'd want to make more. But on Fanduel, at the price point, at the positionality and all of that, I feel like Steph's going to end up in a lot more lineups on there for me than anywhere else. So Steph, to me, seems like a make or break. And, it's tough to sort of bank on a shooter on a make or break, or because he's a guy who can easily regress and have a day where if Steph shoots 50%, I might be screwed today. But boy, is he running good. And if you're running good in your Steph and you're talking about it publicly to this point, I got to trust the guy against Cleveland. Cleveland's so bad. Steph is so good. I think he will be my make or break for the day.
And finally, is there one game player or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public Spags?
I think De'Aaron Fox is the one that I'll be under on. I do like Trae Young more. I do like Steph by a lot more than both guys. So I think Fox to me is going to be the one who suffers. And what we talked about here, just general fear. And it sucks for Fox because he's been so good all year long, has really been one shining spot for a Kings team that has not really made any progress in what they're trying to do, or at least not a lot of meaningful progress. But I think poor Fox is going to be the one who suffers. So he'll be the guy I'll go under on. And if he does succeed today, it's going to be great for my best ball team that's hanging on by a thread. So it's a real win-win for me with old De'Aaron Fox.
For me, it's Giannis. That's just a game. Like I said, I think the Hawks can hang in, and I may try to anticipate what's going to be the situation. If Giannis plays a full allotment of minutes, though, that would be bad for me, probably on several levels. So we'll have to wait and see. The news will dictate some of that, but the Bucks kind of not playing well tonight would go a long way for the Hawks and for a lot of things.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. I'm going to go watch Snowfall.
Yeah, me too, apparently. That's
well, and Ben, you said Succession. That's also on my list.
Oh, Succession.
That is very good.
Move that to the top. Succession's amazing.
I have Succession, Yellowstone, Ted Lasso, and now Snowfall. I've never watched The Wire and Sopranos. So which of those should I start first?
I mean,
but that's a lot, man.
Those are like some of the best shows. This is what happens when you watch Law and Order permanently.
Yeah,
I
you
guess.
could have started by watching TV 20 years ago, I guess. Some of this stuff as it was on.
Yeah, you just want to cover like 3 decades of vintage TV.
I just spent
I
the
heard about
last
the
6
show
months
All the
watching
Family.
502 episodes of Law and Order SVU. So now it's opened up so much space. Don't know where to start. All right,
go with The Sopranos. That
is a great one.
Okay,
We watched that recently. It holds up about as well as ever, though. Actually, a few things that are a little uncomfortable. Definitely some homophobia and racism that's a little cash in a way that's probably not very 2021. But they're mafia guys. So you cut us some slack.
Alrighty then. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. MLB Live Before Lock is coming your way next. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the tip-off. Have a good one.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another day of baseball here at Awesemo.com. Terry McBride here with Gundacker, with Alex Awesemo Baker, the boss man himself, coming to you live to talk through another little slate of baseball action here. We've got a little 5-gamer up, so a little bit more time maybe to go through everything. Take our time casually through the slate. But Alex, how you doing? How'd your night go last night?
Doing pretty good. Man, it's a little bit of a chill day today because we got 5 MLB games, 4 NBA games. So a little bit of leisurely pace today. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice time and nice ability to kind of like dig in and, really pour over a lot of details with these different slates. For me, a lot of opportunity to jump around during different sports. But Gun, how you doing, man? How's baseball season been treating you? We did a show early on and then haven't really connected with you recently. How's everything going?
It's going well. Obviously, the train knows that I'm going live and it shows up right on time. But yeah, really good start to baseball. I think we're seeing a lot of lower scoring slates lately in terms of overall games. I think we might see that again tonight. We were just talking about weather before we went live. Another slate where there's not like 80, 90 degree games and cores or anything like that, but there's also like not a ton of like standout pitching. So it's going to be really interesting to navigate through these waters.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of a clunky slate in terms of the pitching offerings. There's one super expensive pitcher and then a lot of guys a couple tiers below in terms of salary. I'm not sure that the super expensive pitcher even deserves that salary that he's getting labeled with. I know he's on top of our board, but we'll get into who that is in a little bit. Got a little business to take care of off the top, you guys. So we talk about it pretty much every day. But if you guys somehow haven't noticed, you haven't seen us pop up when you go into your favorite podcast networks, all of your favorite Awesemo.com shows, except for Live Before Locks, the ones that are right before it's critical, are going up on the podcast network. So if you missed the strategy show in the morning, download it during the afternoon. Listen to it while you're in a work meeting or something like that instead of listening to your boss. Get your fantasy fix when you can. We fit into your day. You don't have to fit your schedule around ours. All of our shows go up on your favorite podcast network. We're running a little contest. We want to capture your 5-star reviews because I know you guys are itching to leave them. So if you leave a 5-star review, you leave it along with a little way to get in touch with you. Twitter handle, email address, the space to send smoke signals to, whatever. Just give us a way to get back to you. We'll find you. But we're going to enter you into a raffle that's good for up to 1 year off your first review. Gets you potential to win every week, and we're raffling off once a week an Awesemo Plus weekly plan. 5-star review. You guys know the drill. 5-star review, favorite podcast network. Try and win a week. Next up, we are brought to you today by one of my favorite sponsors, Jock Market. Are you guys tired of the tanking market on your favorite NBA digital moments site? Is your GameStop stock not treating you right anymore? Is Dogecoin getting dodgy on you? You're looking for stock market style action. Check out Jock Market. If you haven't heard, they're turning fantasy sports into a stock exchange. So forget about waiting to the end of the game to make money. Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of the night. With daily markets for NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA, you guys can make real money every hour, minute, and second of any game that's on the slate. Use the pregame IPO. You pick up shares of your favorite players. You buy, you sell, you hold during the game based on your analysis. Works just like the market. If you think that moment on your favorite digital moment site is going to tank, well, you want to get rid of it. Same thing with a guy. Hey, his team's James Harden and the Nets are blowing out their opponent tonight. He might not play the fourth quarter. Let me dump my James Harden shares and cash out now. This is how this site works. It's awesome. A lot of fun. Download the app now to get started. Use our exclusive promo code Awesemo20. Gets you a $20 bonus on your first deposit. That's exclusive for you guys, exclusive for our community. Awesemo and the number 20 gets you a $20 bonus on your first deposit. Jock Market. Check them out. Like and subscribe, you guys. No free content for baseball today, but the site is up and running with all of the best content in the industry. So jump on there. We've got some great plans for you guys to jump on. We've got very affordable pricing. So any DFS needs and budget, we can find a package that suits you guys pretty well. We've got an MMA promo going on for our MMA DFS fans. I talked about this yesterday. I don't know very much at all about UFC, about MMA. I like traditional boxing a little bit better. I don't really like watching guys make each other submit, but it's an interesting DFS sport. It's a great spot to make money. We talked about it with Max yesterday. A lot of the industry's behind the curve because they don't have tools like what we provide on the site. Alex has gone out of his way to develop some killer stuff for the UFC. We've got our top fighters tool. We've got great projections. We've got ownership, everything you can imagine. And we're running a little promo. We've got UFC 261 coming up, Usman versus Masvidal. It's on the 24th. So we've got a good deal going. If you use promo code UFC 261, you get 50% off your first month of Awesemo MMA. That includes the top fighter tool. So you can pull that thing up even if you don't know anything about these fighters, which is exactly how I use it. I scroll down. I look for the top-end fighters, the people with high-end rankings for a knockout win, probability of scoring more than 100 points, which is critical in MMA DFS. We lay all this out for you guys to make very easy decisions. Promo code UFC 261, 50% off your first month of Awesemo MMA. Stop guessing, start winning. Business conducted. Let's get into this slate, fellas. It is, like we started out with, kind of a bumpy slate for pitching. And we've got, like we talked about, a 5-gamer. Alex, how do you change up your strategy on a slate like this where it's not an ace-level pitcher and there's only 5 games to choose from? So we've only got 10 teams, 10 stacks, 10 pitchers. What do we do differently in terms of this kind of a slate versus a big 10-gamer with a few aces on it, or even a 5-gamer with a couple aces on it?
I think it matters a lot more for your lineup construction because I'm looking at Draftkings. The top 4 pitchers in our ownership projections are Corbin, Hill, Sean Manaea, and Julio Urias. Guys, I'm not even making you give the likes to give these out here, but if you add these all up, I'm doing all the math in my head. Give me a second. It's like 155%. So like only 45% of ownership is going to the other 6 pitchers. And what that's going to do is like how these pitchers do tonight, it's going to really determine the slate. So if you want to leverage off one of the higher owned pitchers, stack against one of them, that could be the ticket.
Makes sense. Gun, how do you see it? How do you approach a differently shaped slate like this? It's kind of unique compared to what we've seen so far this year, except for maybe some of like the partial days or earlies or something. How do you approach this slate? Are you looking at it any differently, or you're kind of following the same lines?
No, just basically what Alex said. Those top 4 guys are really like, you don't have to know much about baseball. You open that slate. Those are the 4 names you're kind of familiar with. It bottoms out really quickly, but the way baseball works, it's more than likely one of those guys in that bottom 5-6 list of names is going to end up being a pretty solid play. So maybe diversifying just enough to try and get yourself exposure to a couple of those guys that might bleed through with a good fantasy game is how I would approach deep field tournaments. Otherwise, for my bats, I'd probably really just bank on talent here and maybe pay a little bit closer attention to how the bullpen has been performing behind some of these guys that I don't expect to go past 5.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We do have a couple guys that are probably on short-ish leashes anyway, so it's going to be really interesting. The pricing is kind of plateaued in the high 6s through low 8s, with the exception of Julio Urias, who was the guy I mentioned at the top of the show. So just in looking at the top starters tool, Alex, on a day like today where it is kind of level, I mean, we're talking about on FanDuel, it's only 7 percentage points between the top and the bottom, and you're only getting 1 pitcher. It's a little bit bigger on DK, but we're rostering 2 pitchers, so we've got more percentage to work with in terms of the probability of being in the top 2 there. Now, when we're talking about those guys and not having that much stratification between some of the options, particularly in like the mid-range, is this a day where you're really playing the heavy leverage game on those guys and trying to get to some of those pitchers while stacking against some of the aces like you talked about? Or is it more trying to thread the needle in between with the top pitchers and some of the stacks against those other top pitchers and not getting to some of these Merrill Kellys, Tariq Skubals of the world?
Yeah, I mean, if you pick one of the 4 pitchers that's chalk tonight, 2 of the 4 on Draftkings, and then you pick two of the 6 stacks that aren't going against one of these pitchers, I feel like that's going to be a very chalky build probably. So you're going to have to mix it up a little bit. I do see it is possible to go contrarian at pitcher today because the likes of Tariq Skubal, Merrill Kelly, Austin Gomber, and even Jordan Lyles aren't that far behind like the top end guys. And the thing I like about today's slate is none of the guys are on like a short pitch count aside from whoever Toronto's starter will be. I don't think it's been announced, but obviously that doesn't give me a lot of confidence in that spot. But everyone's going pretty deep in these games, so I think everyone's got a little bit of upside on a 5-game slate here.
I like it. Yeah, you don't have to sell me on Merrill Kelly. I picked him in my column today. I don't love him as a pitcher in general, but I think the ownership and the leverage available on him is extremely interesting on both sites. So I wrote him up. I think if he can get through the top half of that lineup a couple times, I think he'll have a decent shot at a decent day. It's a little bit dicey, but I think, yeah, today's a day that we're going to have to be a little bit uncomfortable with our pitching. To me, even the top-end options are in no way safe on this slate. We don't have an ace to work with. Pat Corbin, you could argue a couple years ago, was near that status. Julio Urias, you could argue, is maybe approaching that status. For me, I'm not there yet on him, and that's an interesting price. So we'll hash those out. We're going to get into some game-by-game, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Make sure you hit that subscribe. A lot of people leave that out of the process there. That's how you find out. You get the notifications every time we go live. So especially with baseball, if you're a baseball player, there are weird slates all over the place. Sometimes we're early. Sometimes we're in the later part of the afternoon. We move these shows around. Subscribing is how you get the notifications that we are going live with all of our different content. So never miss a minute. If you do miss it, grab it off the podcast networks. So guys, getting into the first game a little bit here. Got the Arizona Diamondbacks coming into D.C., taking on the Washington Nationals. Diamondbacks with the aforementioned Merrill Kelly on the hill. 3.52 implied run total for the D-backs going into Nationals with Pat Corbin. and a 4.57 implied total for the Washington Nationals. For me, like I mentioned, this is a spot where I probably will roll with some Merrill Kelly going up against what is, on the top end, a dangerous Nationals lineup. But I think there's enough leverage there, and I think those prices are really interesting across both sites. Alex, how are you seeing this game in terms of the pitching matchup? Are you interested in either one of these pitchers? And I guess since we're talking about it's a yes for most of the pitchers, and to some degree, tell us to what degree you're interested in these pitchers.
Definitely. So I think Merrill Kelly is probably the enigmatic option here, where last year, pretty solid numbers. Only had a few starts, but had a 4x FIP, 23% K rate. Then this year, over the first 2 starts, he's been pretty abysmal with 11% strikeout rate and 5.6 xFIP. So he just hasn't had the stuff in the first 2 starts, but that's only 2 starts. And we've seen early in the season, some of the guys that had a hot start have come back down to earth. The opposite is true as well. And like the fact that strikeouts being up so much this year isn't a bad thing either, where maybe it's just easier to strike guys out now. The matchup versus Washington isn't the greatest, though, because they are one of the tougher teams to strike out on the slate. But no one's really given Merrill Kelly any love in tournaments tonight, so I don't mind taking a little contrarian stance there in some lineups.
Gun, you with us on that one? For me, Merrill Kelly, if we've got a like David Peterson of the day, I think it might be Merrill Kelly in this spot, even though to Alex's point, yeah, I don't love it. Guy who does put guys on, not the biggest strikeout numbers in the world. To add to Alex's stats, 183 innings the year before last, only a 20.3% strikeout rate with a 4.51 xFIP and a 1.31 WHIP. So it is a little bit bumpy, but to me, it really stood out just about the leverage and how little people are going to get to him. Are you getting to Merrill Kelly, Gun, in tournaments? Are you getting to any Pat Corbin?
More Merrill Kelly just because of the price point, more so on DraftKings. At this point, with how shallow pitching is, I'm looking for an inning eater SB2. If he can fall at a strikeout per inning, that'd be great, but I wouldn't even expect that much from Kelly. It's just more of like he's got enough bullets in the tank, 90, 94 pitches last 2 starts. If BABIP goes his way and some balls drop his way, then 14 to 18, maybe 20 fantasy points, not an egregious range of outcomes. So, yeah, a little bit of Kelly. Corbin, the jury's still out on Corbin for me. Just went 80 pitches last time out. Obviously, we believe that in his DNA is a strikeout pitcher. If you push back the sample size beyond last year, so maybe we believe in that, and maybe we don't even need a crazy ceiling at 7-8 on DraftKings. Another guy that maybe gets us to 20. I do think the D-backs are a little bit more scrappy and a little harder to strike out, especially in their sample size versus lefties. So, but that bottom half of the D-backs lineup does bottom out, and they're still without Ketel Marte. So I can see both pitchers being in my DraftKings player pool. Really, no one's off limits today. If you've got an appearance with 90 pitches, you're probably going to be in my player pool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the case. I'm going to have a little bit of all of these guys that we talk about. So, take everything out there, everybody listening, take everything to mean that we're talking in degrees of ownership for this slate. It's not really a slate where we're going to be crossing anybody off completely. I don't think. Maybe the sorting process that I go through takes somebody out, but yeah, I think a guy like Corbin is definitely in play. You mentioned the strikeout rate just the year before last in 2019, a normal season. 33 starts, 202 innings pitched, 28.5% strikeout rate. That's perfectly fine. 1.18 WHIP, 3.49 xFIP. If he's that guy again, the Nats have a good pitcher on their hands. That's maybe not ace caliber, but that's certainly two starter level. So the issue definitely would be the ability of the Diamondbacks lineup to limit the strikeouts, like you mentioned. Both lineups really pretty good at that, particularly on the top end. Some guys in the high teens, some guys in the low 20s in terms of the ability to not strike out. Both lineups do get a little bit clunkier in the middle and toward the end. Kyle Schwarber in particular stands out as one of those home run or strikeout type options for the Nats, assuming he's in the lineup. And then you get into guys in the confirmed D-backs lineup, Wyatt Mathis and Andy Young. Wyatt Mathisen projected for nearly 30% strikeout rate from season long. So you're getting him at mid price. but definitely some strikeouts toward the back end that Corbin might be able to pick up. So yeah, they're on the radar here for me as well. But we did see Corbin get lit up by the Dodgers his last time out, 4 1/3, 6 earned runs, 6 hits, struck out 6, but walked 3. A little bit of a dicey start there, not going to help you for fantasy. On the bat side of things, I mentioned the top end of the Nationals lineup a few times. That's definitely a stack I'm willing to take a few shots on in terms of their quality, but I'm really concerned about the ownership they seem to be drawing on both sides. Seems like a lot of people are going to that spot, particularly where they're not going to Merrill Kelly, which could explain some of his low ownership. Alex, are the Nats a stack for you, and how are you getting different with them if they are?
Yeah, I think the Nats are, they're in a pretty good spot where Josh Bell batting third is really cheap on DraftKings. He looks like a nice play. Trey Turner is always appealing because he hits for power and he gets stolen bases. So a lot to love there. And then the Soto, exceptional player. So I think we got some good options on the Nationals. It looks like Bryce Harper is not in the lineup today, but I don't think that. Oh wait, sorry, I'm like years behind here.
All right, it's early in the season. We got to get the bumps out. It's early in the season. Last year was weird, so it's no issues there. Looking down that lineup, we do have some interesting spots that maybe we can defer some ownership from. One that stands out to me, and it's a stacking mechanism that I talk about a lot, is the wraparound, where we get a speed and relatively decent on base type of a guy. Victor Robles fills one of those things. I don't know that he gets on base quite enough that I'm totally comfortable with it, but he's got a ton of speed. Year before last, 28 stolen bases in his 617 plate appearances. Last year, again, weird year, 4 stolen bases in 189 opportunities, but we can forgive him that, I think. I think there's plenty of upside for speed there. The on base is what concerns me. Like I said, 326 on base percentage year before last, only at 293 last year. Is there enough on base skill to get to him, Gunn, as a wraparound option at super low ownership back toward the top of that stack? Maybe pair him with some of those really high owned players as a way to get different.
If you're just trying to get a little bit different, to handcuff into like a Turner Soto, just to flip the order. While we're kind of talking about speed, Tim LeCastro leading off for the Diamondbacks. He's the second fastest player in all of baseball, and he is annoying for pitchers. So his average doesn't grade out well, but he will be amongst the league leaders in infield singles, hit by pitches, and when he gets on, he's a problem. And he's likely a good chip in a chair for a bag or two. And at 2,500 on FanDuel, 3.3 on DK, that'll probably be a guy I lean on liberally as a solid value play on a slate where maybe power isn't as prevalent pre-flop. So I just kind of taking that Robles hunch and putting it to LeCastro, the exact opposite, right? 9-hole home hitter, 1 leadoff away guy. So I'm with you on the wraparound, but also wanted to kind of drop in that LeCastro nugget.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's important to focus on. We talk about that a lot, is a guy's position in the batting order for sure. But something like that, in that kind of a case, you mentioned the away team. So you're getting that guaranteed 9th inning that the home team doesn't have if they're winning. So that could be a plate appearance at the bottom of the lineup. And then you're talking about a leadoff hitter who is most likely going to get more plate appearances than the opposing team's 9 hitter. So very good call there. 2 players I am interested in. And like you said, I think speed could be an important factor on tonight's slate, because I'm not getting a ton of pop either on this slate in terms of my home run metrics or anything that I'm expecting. So I think we are going to need to find ways to score points in interesting ways and maybe scrap together some points. Of course, that's always the night where everything explodes and there's 14 home runs hit in 5 games, and scoring all over the place. Alex, what are you seeing from the Diamondback side of things after LeCastro with all that speed up top? It's not the greatest lineup in the world. We mentioned they don't strike out a ton, but there's not a ton of people going to them either. Are there justifiable reasons to get to a Diamondback stack here? A couple switch hitters up top, couple right-handers going up against the lefty Corbin. Is that a spot that you're looking maybe to get different a little bit with some stacks?
Oh, yeah. I think I actually kind of like the wraparound stack more with Washington. I want to mention, I noticed the bottom of their lineup, Harrison, Castro, and Gomes batting 5 through 7. They really don't have power or stolen base upside. So going to the guy on the Diamondbacks, it looks like the talent is a little bit more even, where Andrew Young batting 8th has some average power, and Matheson as well. So I think the bottom of the order is a tiny bit stronger on the Arizona side, but as a whole, they don't have that star power. So their lineup isn't very great, and they got a tougher matchup than average with Corbin. So I think they're interesting for contrarian play because the ownership is very low, but not a team that you can have a ton of confidence in.
Yeah, and I think when we try and dip to the bottom of the lineup, and you mentioned it is maybe a more even team, but when we try and dip to the bottom of the lineup, we're trying to do that to unlock the star-type players at the top of the lineup. So like a Trey Turner, like a Juan Soto, a Josh Bell, and a Kyle Schwarber, I would rather be dipping to the bottom of the lineup to unlock them than to unlock Tim LeCastro, Carson Kelly, Eduardo Escobar, and Asdrubal Cabrera. So just from that perspective, I'm with you on how it makes sense. But I think the LeCastro call is definitely excellent in terms of his speed. Gun, are you using LeCastro more as a one-off? Or are you going to the Diamondback stack maybe a little bit more than Alex and I are excited about? Or are you going to be mixing them in for some bats? What are you doing?
So I'm definitely going to have exposure to 1 through 5. I don't know if I'm going to full-on commit to a stack on slot, but I do kind of like – so LeCastro getting on, creating a headache for the pitcher. That benefits the guy in the batter's box. And Carson Kelly is an expensive catcher on DraftKings, the number 3 most expensive catcher. That's a lot of salary to give up to like a no-name catcher. But on Fanduel 2200, and Fanduel players tend to not play catchers voluntarily unless it's like upper echelon guys. Maybe 2200, it's a really cheap shot at a cheap RBI if LeCastro can get on and steal a base, and then next a knock is a RBI single, and 2200 Carson Kelly has already become an impact player in your lineups.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't spotted that he was hitting second in that lineup, but that's interesting. You don't usually get a catcher in that spot in the batting order in general. And he's a high-end kid. He was a pretty high-end prospect coming in, a very good defensive catcher for one, but also, a pretty premium bat for a catcher, which we always have to put in as a qualifier. But yeah, I like that. That's an interesting spot. I think we've covered this game top to bottom, soup to nuts. So I think we can move on. Coming up next, we've got the Texas Rangers with Jordan Lyles on the hill. 347 implied total for the Rangers. They're at Tampa Bay in the Dome, taking on Rich Hill on the mound, and the Tampa Bay Rays with a 4.62 implied total for them. Jordan Lyles made 2 starts already this year. He went 5 2/3, gave up 2 earned runs, 5 hits, and 1 home run, striking out 8 against Kansas City. 8 is kind of a standout strikeout game for him. Only struck out 1 in the second start, gave up 2 home runs, walked 2, gave up 6 hits and 3 earned runs over 4 1/3. So bump your second start. Hill on the other side of things, 4 innings, his first start, gave up 4 earned, home run, 2 walked, 4 strikeouts versus Miami. Then went 6 innings, gave up 4 on 4 hits, 1 home run, 7 strikeouts against our New York Yankees. Gun. Is that something that makes you fear Rich Hill? Did the 8 strikeouts in the first game make you fear Jordan Lyles or want to get to these guys as pitchers? What are we doing with the pitching from this game, Gun?
I'd probably be more on the Rich Hill side of things. Rangers project a little less menacing, putting them into Tropicana. I will say to double down on our stolen base theme so far, Mike Zunino, if he's catching for the Rays, he's allowed 10 stolen bases already this season and has not thrown out 1. And Rich Hill's already allowed 4 in 10 innings. So you can run on Will so far at Zunino, and Rich Hill's not really helping the cause. Of course, he's going to be a low velo, heavy curveball guy anyway. It's not really a one singular Ranger that I'm identifying as a must attack for a speed. But I probably have a little bit more Rich Hill just as a I'm not even playing him for the strikeouts, just for like a soft contact type of guy, eat some innings for me, and then hopefully still some strikeouts throughout the way. Jordan Lyles, he's had a tale of 2 games thus far. One game I thought that Texas might have a sleeper ace here, and then that other game just 1 strikeout. So I think if I'm going to compare 2 games, then I'm going to look at the DNA of his history, and his history suggests that he's not that great. So I'm going to lean more towards the Rays bats than Lyles exposure, and probably way more towards Hill exposure than Jordan Lyles exposure. And looking at this Rays lineup, so far Lyles has been pretty porous against lefties the last 2 years, and there's a couple lefties with some pop. Meadows and Brandon Lau, first and third, look like a really nice handcuff for me.
Yeah, top end of the Rays order for me is popping for a little bit of power, primarily around the first three hitters, Meadows, Arozarena, and Brendan Lowe. And then it kind of tails off a little bit. And the same thing with my projections. You can also kind of track that in terms of their salary. It declines pretty quickly as you go down that lineup. But there are some mix-in bats that are a little bit interesting in that confirmed lineup from Tampa. I think Brett Phillips is maybe a little bit interesting. Again, going down to the bottom of the barrel in the lineup in the batting order, where you're getting him for 2,500 on DK, 2,000 on FanDuel. Another guy pretty productive on the base paths. The ability to get on base has not really been demonstrated at the major league level, but he's one of those post-hype prospect types that the Rays picked up, and they're very, very good at identifying those guys. Manny Margot is another one of those guys, has been excellent for them. So that's a spot I'm somewhat interested in. I'm interested in Margot in the middle of that order, maybe gets a little bit of Mike Brasso in that order. So I think there are definitely some spots in that Tampa batting order. With somebody trying to...
I just want to say, I had talked about Zunino, and that lineup just came out. It looks like it's going to be Francisco Mejia, so we can throw out the Zunino stat.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't realize that was confirmed when you were saying it, but I think it's still kind of an interesting point against Rich Hill, who does a lot of stolen bases, throws a lot of balls in the dirt and everything there. And you do have some speed on the other side with Leody Taveras in particular. But talking about Tampa Bay, Alex, is that a stack that you're looking at going up against Jordan Lyles, who, to further the point about him being a couple different pitchers at the same time, last year had a 13.5% strikeout rate across 57 innings with a 5.89 xFIP and a 1.56 WHIP. The year before, 24.4% strikeout rate across 141 innings, which is significantly higher, and a FIP of 4.64 and a 1.32 WHIP. So he was a lot better in 2019. Still not a great pitcher by any means, but definitely better, more strikeouts. What are you doing with Jordan Lyles? What are you doing with the Rays bats, Alex?
Yeah, I think Lyles is a weaker pitcher on today's slate. His xFIP over the past couple of seasons has been around 6, so he hasn't really been able to show that he has good stuff. Only 20% strikeout rate, 21% over the first 2 starts this year and 13% last year. So he's not good for fantasy because he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. The Rays lineup is a little bit better than average. So all in all, a spot where there's not a lot of reasons to go to Lyles other than no one else wants to go to him either. So when it comes to the bats for Tampa Bay, what I'm seeing is the first 4 guys have really high ownership, but then the rest of the lineup, not so much. And I see some opportunities there because when I'm looking at the stacks, obviously we want guys that can either hit for power or get stolen bases. And almost everyone in this lineup is capable of one or the other. So with the exception of the catcher, Francisco Mejia. So I think you have some pretty good options for stacking up Tampa Bay and still being a little bit contrarian by going to some of the lower owned options.
For sure, yeah. And another little piece of the puzzle there, in the middle of that lineup, some of the interesting hitters are not expensive. So you can pair them with the pretty inexpensive top end of the order. You're also getting them with low ownership, like you mentioned, but they've also got position flexibility, which I really like. New thing that we're getting used to on FanDuel this year, with the ability to move some of these guys around and put them together in different combinations can really help diversify a lineup as well, even when you're using them in conjunction with some of the chalkier options. So I really like what the Rays are presenting today. It's a lineup full of post-type prospects as well. Manny Margot, Mejia himself, the catcher that we've all mentioned now, is one of those guys as well. Really highly regarded prospect coming in. Struggling to find it at the plate. Did hit 8 home runs in just 244 plate appearances in 2019. So he's flashed it a little bit, but there's significant upside there. I mentioned Phillips, and then we get the top end that we all like. So I really like that. Is anybody willing to go to this Rangers lineup? It's like my favorite question of the day every day, and I always get it wrong. Alex, what are you doing with the Texas Rangers going up against Rich Hill?
So we got to mention that their cleanup hitter, Adolis Garcia, is only 2K on DraftKings and FanDuel, which is a little bit ridiculous, but it is a lefty-lefty matchup. So, I mean, oh, wait, no, sorry, that's not right. It's righty. Adolis Garcia is a righty, so that makes a lot more sense because of the matchup. So he's really popping as far as a great value. He's a outfielder, so you can pretty much fit him into any lineup. I'm wondering where the ownership's going to fall with him because This is the kind of guy that may be worth changing up your stacking settings, because it does open up some new opportunities if you put him in there at 2K, and he's in a lot better spot than most 2K players. So he's really standing out for me. And then of course we got their good power hitters, Gallo and Nate Lau. Going up against Rich Hill, not a great spot, but there is some upside here.
Yeah, and Garcia is particularly interesting, right? You mentioned the spot in the batting order is a prime spot, and the cleanup spot only 2,000 on both sites. This kid has upside. This is a kid in 2019 in AAA. He hit 32 home runs and stole 14 bases in just 529 plate appearances. In AAA the year before that, in 428 plate appearances, he hit 22 home runs, stole 10 bases. So there is definitely power and speed upside in this kid. The one concerning thing is he's kind of an all or nothing guy. That 2019 season that was excellent, 30.1% strikeout rate at AAA. The year before in 2018, 23.1% strikeout rate, again in AAA. Never below 20% in his minor league history in terms of strikeout rate, but just excellent power and speed numbers. So definitely somebody I'm interested in, particularly at the min price. I wish it was a slate where we had aces that I really wanted to pay up for and use some of this savings, because this would be an interesting Texas lineup for me. I think Joey Gallo is definitely interesting in that space as well. Not getting the tremendous power upside that I normally get on Gallo for today. Gun, I know you run a home run model. Is that something you're seeing for Joey Gallo today as well? Is his power a little bit suppressed from where you normally see him?
Usually as one of the highest. Let me see. Control F. Gallo. Gallo has a 3.48. My target number is 4. So yeah, it's not crazy high. Interesting.
And are you going to do any of these Rangers before we move on? I think we've covered this one pretty well.
Yeah. So I mean, Gallo's still, I'm going to say chip in a chair a lot, but that means literally a chip in a chair for power. He's going to get into one. If it's not off of Rich Hill, maybe he gets a righty out of the bullpen. I'm with the Adalis Garcia. I think, didn't he homer last night? For 2K, I'll run that back and hope for the best. I'm not going to get overly aggressive with the Rangers. I do think they're one of the more porous offenses altogether, but I definitely would have some Gallo and Adalis kind of sprinkled in there. Also, fun fact here for the Rays here, Austin Meadows is listed as the DH, and I've been kind of down on Sasugo, so maybe Kevin Cash is picking up on Sasugo's lack of effectiveness in his DH career so far.
Yeah, maybe some different looks going forward from a team that is happy to give us different looks when guys aren't necessarily producing like they're expected to. And he was kind of an interesting hitter coming over from Japan. There was some history with him that I was kind of excited about, but yeah, hasn't totally delivered. Moving on, guys, we mentioned it up at the top of the show. We have a bunch of different subscription packages available at Awesemo.com. Anything that you need for any sport that has a slate in DFS, we're producing content for it. We're writing articles, we're creating projections, we're creating ownership projections. We've got custom tools like the Boom Bust tool for NBA, like the Top Stacks tool that we refer to on these shows for MLB all the time, the Top Starters tool. We just have tremendous content to help you start winning. And we have different levels of subscriptions for term based on weekly, monthly, annual packages. We've got an express package that's super low cost, includes some ranking-based, some projection-based rankings for people who are just getting started out. So regardless of where you are in your DFS career, regardless of how much you know, regardless of what your budget is, we've got a really good plan to fit your needs. So come to the site, hit us up in the support inbox. I'm happy to help. Hit me up in Slack after you subscribe. Ask me questions. We've got a DFS 101 channel in Slack to help people get started. Just a lot going on at the site. So we have great plans. The best bang for your buck is our $29.95 Platinum plan. Covers all sports, get you all those different tools, the projections, the ownership, every piece of the tools, plus Slack, plus our premium lineup builder, all for $29.95 a week. That's a few lineups. If you're entering $5 contests every day, that's a few days worth of contests. I guarantee your results will increase using our tools and content. Stop guessing, start winning.
I just got a notice here from Joey, our marketing director. He said there's 42 free MLB subscriptions right now on the Awesemo MLB Twitter. So guys, you can get a free week of MLB if you're not already a member. So go follow Awesemo MLB, and there's a link there for a free week.
Look at that. Go grab those now real quick, guys. We're not running a queue or anything. You can get right in. First come, first serve.
Okay, buddy.
We've also got the UFC 261 promo going on, guys. So we can get you 50% off your first month of MMA if you're an MMA fan. Promo code UFC 261, valid through the 24th. Top fighters tool, top projections, ownership, all of it. Stop guessing, start winning. Moving on. We've got the Toronto Blue Jays. As of last check, I did not have a confirmed starter, but I've been operating as if it's Tanner Roark all day. So I've got Tanner Roark numbers up. He made one start, went 3 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, 6 hits, 3 home runs, struck out 2 against those Texas Rangers we were talking about. Blue Jays have a 3.98 total, taking on Jacob Junis in Kansas City. Royals coming to the slate with a 4.36 implied total. Not totally knowing which pitcher is going for Toronto. Talk to me about Jacob Junis. Is anybody looking at him against a pretty decent Toronto Blue Jays lineup here? Gun, do you like anything about Jacob Junis on this one?
Not particularly. I do want to note that I've been as glued to the news feeds as most of you guys, trying to figure out who is pitching. Tanner Roark seems like the guy we expect, but there is rumors circulating that Anthony Kay could draw this start as a contingency or as just a better option than Roark. So kind of prepare yourself for that if you guys are out there with extra time to research. Maybe it's Anthony Kay. But as far as viability on playing Jacob Junis here, I mean, yeah, there might be a much more positive park here than the Blue Jays have been playing for pitchers, but I still think the Blue Jays are pretty talented, and I'm not really that enamored with Junis as a pitcher. I also have a longstanding grudge against Junis for breaking Aaron Judge's wrist, so I just can't put money on it. But no, I'd probably be more on the Blue Jays bats than Junis here.
And, you know, since you mentioned it, I just got to say, boss, great decision hiring a bunch of Yankee fans to help out with the baseball content. I mean, who knows more about buying and selling great players than Yankee fans do? So good decision. That's another reason to subscribe to MLB for at Awesemo.com, guys. So, Alex, what are you seeing in all your analysis on either Jacob Junis or maybe going to some of these Blue Jays bats? What side of that do you prefer?
Junis is someone I think is worth avoiding today. If you go back to his last start, it looks really good because he went 5 and got 6 strikeouts, but he only threw 58 pitches and they still pulled him. So that to me tells me he's not stretched out. That was 8 days ago. So I think the most you're going to get is maybe 70 pitches, which does really make it unlikely for him to go to 5 innings or more. Even though he did last time. So if you're looking at the game log, it's going to make him look better than he is. And the matchup stinks. So it's really probably the bottom guy on the list. Even the low ownership might not sway me there. So that definitely is making me interested in some Toronto bats. I saw a ton of hype about Bo Bichette because he set some new record for the most extra base hits in X Games. I think he tied like some all-time GOAT or something.
Former Yankee.
So I wonder if there's going to be a little extra hype on him today because he's been trending, but he's a great power hitter and he steals bases. So that's definitely a guy I want in my Yankee stack or in my Blue Jay stacks. And then I'm willing to chase some guys that maybe have had tough starts this season in Lourdes Gurriel and Rowdy Tellez, assuming they're in the lineup, because they're good power hitters. They just haven't been able to do it this year. But it's been like 40 plate appearances, so it's not time to start worrying yet.
Yeah, definitely enough track record with most of these hitters, and then pedigree at least on the young guys who have really started to prove it for the most part in this Toronto lineup. I love going to. They're to me they're fun to play too. If you've been a baseball fan for a long time, you're getting 4 kids in this lineup, 3 with major league fathers, and then Lourdes Gurriel. His father played in the Cuban leagues at the most elite level for like 25 years. Won a gold medal like 6 different times all around the world. Just an excellent player. He's Yuli Gurriel's younger brother and a kid who's expected to turn into basically a star caliber player. So up and down this lineup, there's just great genes for playing baseball, and these kids are proving it in their years. So sons of Hall of Famers turning in good careers for themselves is really interesting. Love to see it. And you get excellent production from a guy like Vlad Guerrero, Kevin Biggio in that group, Bo Bichette, like you mentioned, Alex. I'm getting excellent power numbers on the Blue Jays from both sides of the plate as well. So like a Randall Grichuk, even in a righty-righty matchup, I love the power mark that I have on him. He was my home run call for the day. I'll give that one away early. But Gunn, how you seeing the power marks for the Blue Jays before we jump over to the Royals side of things? Take us from that straight into a look at the Royals lineup here.
Yeah, I'm looking at Biggio, Grichuk as well. Bo Bichette's on a tear right now. I would say yesterday, maybe his first homer was a little bit more park influenced than Kaufman will let him get away with. But hey, if a homer in that park turns into a double or a triple in this park, I'll take it. I just think the hitters here are better than the pitcher. So yeah, I'll be on the Blue Jay stack. I would imagine that they're going to profile pretty well ownership wise as well. On the Royal side, it's hard to be over committed to our opinions on the Royals without a definitive answer on who is the starter for the Blue Jays. If it's Tanner Roark, he's bad. The Royals haven't been particularly effective either. But with Merrifield, Salvador Perez, Carlos Santana, there's still talent in that 1 through 5 speed and power and some OBP approach. If it is Anthony Kay, he's a little bit more of a guy that can miss some bats. He still doesn't profile as an incredibly large sample size elite guy, but he is a obviously if he does draw a start, maybe the Blue Jays think that he's the better option. Maybe he longmans behind Tanner on a quick hook. I wish we would have a clearer, more concise understanding of what the Blue Jays do with their starting pitcher today. But either way, I'd probably be there on some rolls just because of how Swiss Army knife that top 5 can be, with some speed, with some power, some hit for average. So I'd probably mix them all together. The Blue Jays bullpen has been overperforming expectations coming into the season. Merriweather, he's been looking untouchable. So if they do end up bridging into that bullpen earlier, maybe that's a downgrade for this Royals offense. But either way, I don't think I'm going to get to either Blue Jays pitcher here. So I guess by default, I'll end up with more Royals than anything from this game. Yeah,
makes some sense. Makes some sense for sure. And significantly different ownership numbers from site to site. It looks like, well, at least on a few of these hitters, you're getting a little bit more Carlos Santana, basically doubled up on the FanDuel slate. You're getting Andrew Benintendi pulling a little bit more ownership. Whit Merrifield pulling 25% more ownership on the FanDuel slate. So a little bit more people going to them over there where their prices still haven't come up. Alex, are you going to the top end of the Royals lineup? Are you mixing in some of the bottom before we move on from this game on either side?
Yeah, this one's interesting because I don't really understand exactly why the Royals are pulling in, it looks like, the most ownership today. I mean, obviously the park is a nice one for them, but even though they have this matchup versus unnamed pitcher, they're still underdog in this game. So the sports books really aren't making it seem like they have a great shot today. Their lineup today, it's okay. I mean, a little bit better than average power, about average getting on base. So when a team like that is the chalk of the day, that can be an easy-ish fade, but it is a 5-game slate. So I'm a little torn. I guess I'd probably prefer to go to a lower owned stack that maybe is in a little better spot.
Yeah, for me, that's kind of the case. They're just pulling too much ownership. So hopefully that comes down in a later update, and we might be able to get a little bit more utility out of that Royals team. It is a team, well, like Gunn mentioned, there's a lot of interesting skill mix at the top end of that lineup. So it is a team that I've talked about on a few shows and I do like getting to. But we got to move on. We got about 15 minutes left in the show, guys. 2 games left to cover. Detroit Tigers in Oakland. Tigers rolling out Tariq Skubal and a 3.51 implied total on their side, taking on Sean Manaea, lefty for the A's, with a 4.57 runs implied run total backing him up on the A's side of things. Skubal flashed some interesting skill last season. Short debut, 32 innings pitched, but 27.6% strikeout rate, nothing to scoff at. 4.81 xFIP. Okay, he's a rookie. He's getting his feet wet. 1.22 whip, pretty decent. Is that a spot that we're maybe looking at against this A's lineup where we know one of their main power bats is hits from the left side of the plate, 2 if we're counting Mitch Moreland? There are some strikeouts available in that lineup. On the other side of things, Sean Manaea has been a quality pitcher at times in his career, but more of a soft tosser, not a huge strikeout guy all the time. Struck out 20.3% of hitters in 54 innings last year, so there is around league average there, but 27.5 the year before, only 29 innings pitched. So we're wondering what Sean Manaea is at this point in his career. Are we going to either one of these pitchers, Alex?
Yeah, I think you could go to either one, but there are definitely question marks for both. So Sean Manaea, he hasn't really been a great strikeout pitcher, at least the past season, where he had a 21% K rate. This year over the first 2 starts at 17%. He has averaged more than 5 innings per start, which is a good indicator that he does have that upside to go pretty deep in the game. There was some big news that just dropped about the Tigers. Nomar Mazara is on the IL. So they lost their cleanup hitter. I'm sure that makes a huge difference here. But anyway,
take one of the power bats away for sure.
Yeah, if you're looking at Mazara for 2K value today, gonna have to go back to the drawing board. But anyway, the Tigers lineup, it has some intriguing young guys where towards the top of the lineup, you got a couple of speedy guys, and then you got some guys that have some decent power. All in all, I think they're around the average mark here. So they wouldn't be a team I'd really target, and Manaea isn't really jumping out at me with his numbers. I see the ownership is very high for him, so I'm thinking maybe I want to look somewhere else.
Yeah, that was something that stood out to me. The ownership mark, particularly on FanDuel, 20.4%. I don't have the DK number directly in front of me, but that is kind of a big number for not a big strikeout guy, certainly not an ace. I wouldn't call him a shaky lefty, but he's a lefty going up against this Detroit team that we've seen pound lefties over the last 2 years. They don't do much well, but they do hit lefties for power decently well. And there are a few new bats in this lineup that add to that. So I'm kind of interested in that Detroit team. I think taking Mazara out of it, lefty, probably doesn't matter for today, fortunately. But getting the guys like Wilson Ramos, Jonathan Scope in that lineup, and then maybe a Renato Nunez with that, along with your switch hitters up top, could make some sense. And they're very low owned. So I'm willing to throw a few shares at least of Detroit stacks at a lefty, at Sean Manaea, who I don't think is going to put up a monster game here. I've got him projected okay, but I think I prefer the Tigers bats. Gun, what are you seeing in terms of Tigers power in your home run model as we have about 10 minutes left?
Yeah, so I like the Athletics quite a bit here. I also will be on the Tigers. Neither pitcher has, at least so far this season, missed many bats. Manaea, if you look his last 3 years, he's been a strike thrower, hasn't had a walk problem. But so far this year, just a 52% first pitch strike on an 8.1% swing and strike rate. So he's not getting ahead in the count early, and he's not missing bats. So he could be struggling. I think he is down, or he's up on about a mile per hour on his pitches so far. And on the other side, Skubal is down at a mile per hour, but that's not overly concerning this early season. Pitchers building up their strength, but Skubal also has an 8% swing and strike rate. So both these guys so far profile more as a contact pitcher. And I actually think both, like, if it wasn't for the spark, I'd be pretty enamored with the game stack, and I probably will stick it to a game stack. I talked about earlier about looking at bullpens. So far, the Tigers and the Athletics have allowed the first and second most amount of homers out of the bullpen. Neither bullpen particularly great, and overall high whip, high power. Obviously, we can isolate that to a couple of pitchers, but I think there's a good chance those pitchers either are introduced in this game or in this series, so someone to look for. And then Akil Baddoo, he might have gained himself a spot in the lineup with Mazara going down. Not a great like lefty matchup, but I'm not convinced Baddoo isn't the greatest player of all time. So if he gets up in the lineup, I might just play him. So I'm kind of more interested in the stacks here, and I know like the park isn't friendly. But so far, neither one of these pitchers, especially if they're in Manaea, I've seen a lot of people talking about how they're just going to play him by process of elimination. Like there's not standout pitchers. I might just be more inclined to go for the offenses here.
Yeah, for me, even that process and thinking about it through that prism doesn't lead me to Sean Manaea on this slate. I would rather land on some of these guys who are lower owned with similar probabilities of being the top option. So yeah, for me, that's not really going to be a go-to spot. I will give Tariq Skubal a little push because I think I'll have some shares of him, but I do prefer the Oakland Bats in this one. Through every stop in the minors, Skubal was over a 30% strikeout rate. He has a pretty nasty fastball changeup slider mix, 71st percentile chase rate last year at the major league level. So he's got the skill. I don't know that he's going to put it all together by any means, and certainly don't know that it's going to happen tonight, but I will give him a little push based on that. Alex, what are you seeing before we move on from this game? Are you getting to any of the A's bats going up against the lefty Skubal? You've got Matt Olson, who is pretty good lefty-lefty, or at least not as dramatically diminished as people seem to think he is, given the ownership that he's pulling right now. Then you've got some good righties in Matt Chapman, Ramon Laureano, Mark Hanna hitting around him. I don't really believe in Jed Lowry, but I think Sean Murphy hitting behind them is interesting, Stephen Piscotty, and maybe even Elvis Andrus down the bottom. This is a stack I can roll out in a few different ways. Are you getting to Smays?
Yeah, I definitely think that the A's are looking like a really solid option today. I mean, Tariq Skubal does look like he has some decent stuff, so that's not really moving the needle a ton. But one of the things I'm thinking about is, like, usually Oakland is bad for bats because the Bay Area just isn't warm. Mm-hmm. But this time of year, it's about the same as every other park. So I think that this one could be one of the better spots on the slate because I feel for the temperatures, like, Oakland does favor bats a little bit more. So what I'm seeing here in Oakland's lineup is that there's a few guys that are pulling very low ownership with Jed Lowry. I'd be interested in how you guys are handling him because he has a great spot in the order, but I feel like he's been, like, injured, like, so much over the past few years. So I just don't know what to expect there. But if he's batting high in the order, I guess the A's are kind of thinking he's going to be good. And then Matt Olson's got a lefty-lefty matchup, so that's depressing the ownership. The Skubal, if he's having a rough day, I don't think he's going to have a long leash. So I'm not afraid to go to lefty-lefty in the stack here.
Yeah, I actually like getting to Olson there, lefty-lefty, as a differentiator. Just real quick, in his career, he's not that bad against lefties. He's a 230, 309, 425 slash against lefties, but the power stays. 195 career ISO, creates runs at a clip 1% better than the league average. So it's not like he totally dies on the vine. That's down from, of course, a 276 ISO with a 251, 350, 527 career and 36% WRC plus against righties. So he's much better against righties, but he's not a total dead spot against lefties by any means. Still can flash the power. For me, Jed Lowry had a nice little story breakout year, in 2018 with Oakland. He hit a career high 23 home runs. Before that, his career high was 16 in 2012, and he had hit 14 the year before in 2018. He was 34 when he did that in 2018 as his breakout season. That was with these A's. He went to the Mets, was hurt, sat out last year, came back. He's 37 now. I'm not buying it. Even though he's hitting third, I like the idea that he's hitting third, and we have to get to him in stacks because he's hitting third and at a cheap price. So he's included in what I'm doing today, but I do not like the spot. I wish they would hit him somewhere else in the batting order. Gunn, are you seeing that differently since Alex asked? And then we're going to jump to this next game.
Jed Lowry has 2 hits in 4 straight games, like in every game, 2 hits. And the guy in front of him, Ramon Laureano, has 8 stolen bases on the year. So if Laureano gets on, he's going to create a headache for the pitcher, maybe easier pitches for Jed Lowry and the protection behind him with Olson's power. I'm not ready to give up on Jed Lowry. I think he's cheap enough in a positive spot that I'll be there on him.
All right. And you definitely want to include him in your stacks, especially if he's hitting in that 3 spot. And yeah, the 8 stolen bases on Laureano is absurd so far in this short a sample. So good for him, running a lot, kind of contrary to Athletics thinking in terms of Moneyball and everything, but that's interesting. Moving on to the last game of the night, we've got the Colorado Rockies and their miserable lineup with Austin Gomber on the hill, 2.89 implied total, taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers with Julio Urias on the hill. Kind of buried the lead on this one. He is the highest priced pitcher, over 10,000 for Urias on DraftKings, in the 9,000s on the Fanduel slate, 9,600. I don't get him projected out incredibly high. I know he's the leading pitcher on our top starters tool, so I'm really curious to hear what Alex, what you have to say about him. For me, he's a guy who's a lot of talent, has been in the league since 2016 when he was 19 years old, still only 24, ton of upside. I don't know that he's really proven it yet. Talk to me about Urias, Alex.
Yeah, I think he's always been a little frustrating in fantasy because the Dodgers, they do tend to pull their younger starters pretty quick if they're not like perfect. But I think he's just the number one option on the board because of the matchup where Colorado has been really miserable. And then the lineup they're rolling out today is absolutely bad, like really bad. So they have this new guy, Alan Trejo, batting 8th. And then going up the order, it doesn't get a lot better. Jonathan Daza, Elias Diaz, Fuentes, none of these guys have any power. So that's just like half the lineup. That's pretty much dead. Of course, it's baseball. So like you never really know.
That is where they go off, yeah.
Yeah, but this is definitely a great matchup for Urias. But I agree. I don't think that the baseline is that great. So I'm not overly enamored with him.
Yeah, that's the concern for me is the baseline. But yeah, to your point, that lineup is just awful. That might as well be Danny Trejo, the actor, hitting in the 8th spot for the Rockies. It would be about the same. Gunn, are you seeing this one any differently? Any reason to go to the Rockies bats? Are you getting any Austin Gomber? For me, all he's doing is suppressing the Dodgers' power marks a little bit, but it's really only about the ground ball rate that he's generated so far this year and a little bit at the end of last year that's keeping that down. I don't truly believe in it in my model here. I think the Dodgers are in a pretty good spot going up against him, some of those righty bats. What are you seeing for Gomber? What are you seeing for both sides on the bats, Gunn, real quick as we wrap up last 2 minutes?
So normally Urias to 10.1K, not a comfortable price point, but I think value is extremely subjective at the pitcher spot today. He's thrown 90 pitches in his first 2 starts. Should be stretched out. When I play pitchers against the Rockies, I'm worried about Trevor Story. I'm worried about Charlie Blackmon. Neither one of them in the lineup, which makes this a dream matchup. Implied total under 3. We might get 6-7 innings out of Urias, so I can eat innings, maybe get that quality start. And heck, maybe I get lucky with a strikeout per inning. He has an 80% first pitch strike so far. So he's going to be aggressive early, which is going to save pitches. And I like to see that. Gomber, I'm probably not getting to him. I do think I'll be right there on the Dodgers as one of my top end stacks. It's more of just betting on talent at this point. And I've been avoiding playing pitchers against the Dodgers. I'm with you on Gomber suppressing power and upside, but Dodgers just project really, really talented. And if they don't get Gomber, maybe they get in the bullpen. So Urias, yes, that's probably my SP1. And Gomber, probably not.
Yeah, and a lot of high-owned, very expensive Dodger bats. As usual, we kind of know who they are. Looks like the projected lineup is going to be the usual suspects in there. I don't think we have anything really unique to say about them. But, Alex, before you give me your home run pick, which you can tack on to the end here, any reason to avoid the Dodgers, or is that a spot you're going to real quick?
Well, I think the spot may be a little overrated tonight. Gomber, although a limited sample, doesn't appear to be horrible. So I'm seeing this this sub 5 team total in LA tonight, which is a little bit low for them. So I do think they might come in a little bit overowned today. Although as I'm saying this, it's hard to have like a lack of confidence in the Dodgers. They have one of the best lineups in the business. It's just the park they play in isn't great for production. And the matchup, I guess, is average. So talk
to me about your home run pick so we can get out of here. Alex's home run pick today is brought to you by Jock Market, as was this whole show. Daily markets for NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA. Make real money every hour, minute, and second. Download their app from your favorite app store. Awesemo 20 gets you $20 on your first deposit. Alex, home run pick for the day.
I'm a bit of a home run pick fish, so I'll pick a spot I know is not ideal. Matt Olson in this lefty-lefty matchup versus Tarek Skubal. I'm just I'm thinking if the A's get going, Skubal is going to be out of the game pretty quick, and Olson will have a great shot at hitting a moonshot.
Super low on Matt Olson. I love that spot. Gunn, what's the bomb detector? I'm so jealous of that name because I have a home run model too. What's the bomb detector showing us for today, Gunn?
So all Oakland bats are up there, but my favorite call for a homer is going to be Austin Meadows leading off against Jordan Lyles.
Rock and roll. And mine, like I said earlier, was Randall Gritchick. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Like and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Don't leave that out. We have a couple shows coming up. NBA Deeper Dive with Luffy and Adam. We've got Live Before Lock with Greg and Eric. And then we've got an MMA strategy show later on with Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat. Guys, appreciate it.